Little did Jorge Eliécer Gaitán know, this day in 1948 would change Colombia forever. It began like any other spring morning in Bogotá, a crowd forming around a man whose voice had become the heartbeat of a dispossessed nation. Gaitán, a charismatic lawyer and liberal leader who had risen from modest roots to speak for the poor, promise land reform, and challenge entrenched coffee oligarchs, was hailed as the likely next president. His rallies drew tens of thousands. His promises of social justice alarmed elites and inspired a generation. By April 9th, the atmosphere in the capital was electric and dangerous. The 9th Pan American Conference was in town. Diplomats, journalists, and foreign delegates watched a country on edge. Gaitán left his office that midday, greeting supporters who pressed close, expecting nothing more than another impassioned speech. Moments later, shots cracked through the narrow street. A young man, identified as Juan Roa Sierra, fired. Gaitán fell. Within minutes, Roa was seized by the crowd and lynched. Panic rippled outward. What followed became the Bogotazo, an urban eruption of grief and rage that consumed the city for hours. Stores were looted, public buildings torched, tram lines sabotaged, government offices attacked. The historic center was gutted, facades burned, newspapers and archives destroyed, lives lost in the chaos. Estimates of the dead and wounded vary widely. Historians disagree on numbers, but the human toll was immediate and brutal. Over the coming decade, the assassination would be credited as the spark that ignited La Violencia, the bitter rural and urban conflict that killed tens of thousands across Colombia. From the first hour, conspiracy clung to the killing like smoke to stone. How could a single, apparently unstable gunman so perfectly remove the nation's most dangerous political rival? Witnesses disagreed about Roa's motives. Some claimed political slogans, others muttered about personal grievances or mental disturbance. The official inquiry concluded Roa acted alone, a lone assassin consumed by delusion. That settled nothing. Alternative explanations proliferated. One line of suspicion pointed to Colombia's conservative elites and military officers who feared Gaitán's populism and economic reforms. Another theory cast a wider net. Foreign business interests and diplomatic actors present at the Pan American Conference might have seen Gaitán as a threat to foreign investments and regional stability. A darker suggestion linked clandestine right-wing networks, early embryonic forms of the paramilitary violence that would later plague Colombia, to the planning and execution of the murder. Evidence was and remains fragmentary. Documents, witness statements, and later interviews produce suggestive fragments, but no smoking gun. Each new archive release or memoir fuels a narrative. Each inconsistency fans the embers of doubt. What is indisputable is the chain reaction. The Bogotazo exposed how fragile the state was beneath the veneer of order. Opposition hardened into sustained violence. Political polarization metastasized into decade-long bloodshed. Institutions that might have investigated the assassination fairly were themselves destabilized by the riots. Memory did the rest. Gaitán became both martyr and myth, his death a perpetual question mark in Colombian history. Decades later, Colombians sift through burned newspapers, courtroom transcripts, and oral histories searching for clarity. The assassination of Jorge Eliécer Gaitán remains a hinge moment, a story of mass hope answered by sudden violence, of a city that burned not just from arson, but from the combustible mix of inequality, fear, and politics. The conspiracy theories will not disappear. They are bound to a wound that never fully closed. What endures is the lesson of that April day. When a society's grievances are ignored, a single bullet can set a nation ablaze.